Captain Elias Venn had once survived a meteor storm by hiding inside a disabled cargo drone and pretending to be part of its emotional support system. That experience, in his professional opinion, had prepared him for most things the universe could throw at him. It had not, however, prepared him for standing in Hangar 7 of the orbital station Ardent Cross, watching reality itself fold open like a hesitant apology. The air didn't tear. It reconsidered. A thin ripple spread across the space in front of the landing pad, like someone had dropped a stone into invisible water made of physics. The overhead lights flickered once, then steadied, as if the station systems had collectively decided not to panic just yet. Elias adjusted his gloves out of habit. The gesture did nothing to improve his situation, but soldiers rarely abandon rituals just because they are emotionally useless. "Contact event beginning," droned the station AI through ceiling speakers. Its tone suggested it was reading a weather forecast rather than witnessing interstellar diplomacy unfold in real time. "Please refrain from existential dread. It interferes with calibration." "That's reassuring," Elias muttered. "Glad the station's priorities are in order." Beside him, Commander Rel stood perfectly rigid, as if posture alone could prevent political collapse. "Remember," Rel said, "you are representing humanity." "I was hoping I was just representing mildly annoyed infantry," Elias replied. The ripple widened. Something stepped through. At first glance, she looked human. That was the trick the Virelians always pulled first. Start familiar, then slowly introduce reality-breaking details until the observer questioned their entire understanding of biology. She wore no armor, no insignia, no visible weapons. Just a flowing material that behaved like fabric until it caught light, at which point it briefly behaved like liquid starlight reconsidering its shape. Her presence made the air feel organized. Not heavier, not lighter, just more aware of itself. And then there were her ears. Long, elegant, extending slightly beyond human proportions, tapering into faint bioluminescent edges that shifted color as she moved. They twitched subtly, like they were listening to conversations happening 3 seconds into the future. Elias stared before he could stop himself. Rel leaned in slightly. "Do not stare at the diplomatic asset." "I'm not staring," Elias whispered back. "I'm tactically observing unusual auditory architecture. That is staring with extra steps." The woman's gaze settled on them. Her eyes changed shade, first violet, then something like deep ocean blue, then briefly the color of a badly tuned scanner. Then she spoke. "So this is humanity," she said. Her voice carried the faintest harmonic echo, as if two versions of her were speaking at slightly different emotional settings. "You look smaller in person." Elias blinked. "That's usually our reaction to ships like yours." A pause. Then she tilted her head. "You are the designated soldier. I'm the designated soldier in this immediate 5-meter radius, yes." "Interesting," she said, as if he had just explained a minor local custom involving soup. "You do not appear statistically threatening." "Give it time," Elias replied. "We haven't had coffee yet." The station AI chimed in again. "Designation confirmed. Virelian Continuum envoy detected. Diplomatic protocol engaged. Mandatory hospitality mode activated. Warning, hospitality module is based on human cultural archives from pre-spaceflight sitcoms." Elias closed his eyes. "Oh no." Rel whispered, "What does that mean?" "It means we're about to be very polite and very confused." The woman stepped fully onto the platform. The ripple behind her sealed itself like nothing had ever happened, which Elias found personally offensive. "If you are going to bend reality, at least leave a crack." "I am Caliph of the Virelian Continuum," she said. "Captain Elias Venn," he replied automatically, then immediately regretted sounding like he was introducing himself at a job interview. "And this is Commander Rel, who is currently evaluating whether this is a dream or an administrative error." "I am leaning toward error," Rel said. Caliph nodded thoughtfully. "Your species uses humor to mask uncertainty." We also use it to survive meetings longer than 40 minutes, Elias said. That is efficient. The hangar doors behind her sealed with a low thrum, atmospheric stabilizers engaged. Somewhere, a cargo lift made a sound like it was reconsidering its life choices. Then more figures began to emerge behind Caliph, virally in attendance, analysts, and at least one being whose shape refused to settle into a consistent geometry, which Elias decided not to acknowledge directly. He failed anyway. "Is that one okay?" he asked. Caliph glanced back. "Yes, that is just Tarvesh. He is currently deciding what form he prefers today." "That sounds exhausting," Elias said. "It is," Caliph agreed. The station AI cleared its metaphorical throat. Formal directive. The Virelian Empire proposes a political bonding arrangement to stabilize human-Virelian relations. Emotional subtext detected. Probability of cultural misunderstanding, 92%. Rel turned slowly toward Elias. "Did it say bonding?" "Yes." "As in?" "Yes." Caliph looked between them. "Your species is reacting strongly." "We tend to do that when someone says bonding arrangement without specifying it involves paperwork and/or explosions," Elias said. "I see," she replied. "On Virelia, this is considered a strategic union. Symbolic. Stabilizing. Occasionally involves ceremonial exchange of star charts." "That sounds significantly more peaceful than what we just heard," Elias said. The AI added helpfully, "Human interpretation includes marriage." A long silence followed. Caliph blinked, once, slowly. "Marriage?" Elias rubbed his face. "We're working with a very enthusiastic translator." Rel muttered, "I am requesting reassignment to asteroid mining duty." Caliph considered this new information with visible curiosity. "Is marriage distressing in your culture?" "Not inherently," Elias said. "Mostly it depends on whether it comes with surprise galactic politics attached." "That is reasonable," Caliph replied. Then, as if the concept had been filed somewhere important in her mind, she added, "You appear less threatening than expected for someone who may become a symbolic bond." "Thanks," Elias said. "I think." A faint sound came from Caliph's ears, almost like a tonal shift, a subtle modulation in the air. Elias wasn't sure if it was emotion or her ears processing sarcasm in real time. He decided not to ask. Some questions were career-ending. Instead, he said, "So, just to confirm, I was expecting a handshake and maybe a treaty, not interstellar matchmaking." Caliph tilted her head again. "Is that objectionable?" "It's unexpected," Elias said carefully. "That is often the beginning of progress," she replied. The AI, clearly thrilled with itself, announced, "Hospitality protocol engaged. Preparing welcome refreshments. Warning. Beverage synthesis may include culturally inaccurate coffee substitutes." Elias sighed. "Of course it does." The first thing Caliph discovered aboard the human vessel ISS Meridian was that humans had a deeply emotional relationship with beverages. This became apparent within 12 minutes of her arrival, when the ship's hospitality subsystem proudly produced what it called coffee, a substance that looked like it had once been water before making several regrettable life decisions. Caliph studied the cup. She did not touch it immediately, which Elias appreciated. It suggested caution, or possibly telepathic analysis. With Virelians, it was always one or the other and occasionally both. "This is a stimulant?" she asked. "That's what we tell ourselves," Elias replied. Commander Rel, standing nearby, muttered, "It is also a psychological coping mechanism." Caliph took a small sip. The ship's lighting flickered once, as if bracing for impact. Her expression remained perfectly neutral for approximately 3 seconds. Then her ears twitched slightly, curling inward at the tips like they were reconsidering their entire biological existence. Elias leaned forward. "So, it is aggressive," she said carefully. "That's human coffee," Elias said. "We call that morning." Rel added, "We also call it why are we like this." Caliph placed the cup down with ceremonial precision, as though it might explode if handled too casually. Your species consumes this voluntarily. Repeatedly, Elias said. That explains several historical anomalies, she replied. Despite the beverage incident, Caliph adapted to the ship with unsettling ease. She learned the corridors faster than the crew, memorized system layouts after a single walkthrough, and once corrected a navigation algorithm that had been miscalculating jump trajectories for 3 months. The AI was not pleased. Correction, it announced over the speakers. I was not incorrect. I was creatively interpreting spatial uncertainty. You were off by 0.3%, Caliph said gently. That is within acceptable dramatic variance, the AI insisted. Elias whispered to Rel, I think she just emotionally injured our computer. Rel nodded solemnly. Good, it needed humility. Caliph spent much of her time observing humans the way a scientist observes a species that insists on doing everything the hard way on purpose. She watched engineers argue over cable routing while actively tripping over cables. She watched security personnel practice combat drills that included dramatic yelling for reasons no one could fully explain. She watched Elias attempt to repair a broken environmental panel by tapping it firmly and saying, "Come on, buddy," as if it were a stubborn animal rather than a machine capable of regulating atmospheric pressure. You are attempting communication with inanimate systems, Caliph noted at one point. It's called troubleshooting, Elias replied. It works about 30% of the time, which is higher than diplomacy. That is statistically concerning, she said. And yet here we are, he replied. Their conversations gradually became less formal, which on a diplomatic vessel was roughly equivalent to slowly lowering a shield while pretending it was intentional. Caliph began asking more personal questions. Do all human soldiers speak in sarcasm? Only the ones who have survived long enough to develop coping skills. And do they all have difficulty with authority? Elias considered this. We don't have difficulty with authority. We have difficulty with incompetent authority. There's a difference. Caliph nodded thoughtfully. On Virlia, authority is considered a fluid concept, like gravity but less predictable. That explains a lot, Elias said. Rel, passing by, added, it explains everything I am currently afraid of. The turning point came during a routine systems inspection. Caliph was accompanying Elias through the engineering decks when the ship suddenly lurched. Not violently, but with the subtle discomfort of reality briefly forgetting its schedule. Alarms did not blare. Instead, the ship's AI politely announced, minor dimensional fluctuation detected, please remain calm, panic is inefficient. Elias stopped walking. That is never reassuring. Caliph tilted her head. That is a structural instability signature. Before Elias could respond, the corridor lights dimmed, and the air itself seemed to stretch sideways. A thin tear appeared at the far end of the hallway, like space had been scratched. From it emerged a flicker of something not entirely physical, a distortion shaped like intent. Elias said, is that supposed to be there? No, Caliph replied immediately. The ship shuddered. Emergency bulkheads attempted to close but hesitated, as if unsure whether reality still qualified as a valid material. The AI spoke again, slightly faster this time. Warning, unauthorized interspatial intrusion. Possible causality breach. Please refrain from existing in affected areas. That is not helpful, Elias said. Caliph stepped forward. Hey, Elias said quickly, that's probably a bad idea. It is correcting itself, she said. That sounds like something people say right before a disaster escalates. She extended a hand toward the distortion. Elias grabbed her wrist. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her ears shifted subtly, angles changing, faint light pulsing along their edges. The distortion paused like it had noticed her noticing it. Caliph exhaled softly. It is confused. That is also what I am, Elias said. She glanced at him. You are louder in thought than most species. I've been told that, he said. The anomaly flickered again, then collapsed inward, as if deciding the conversation was no longer worth continuing. The corridor stabilized. Lights returned. The AI announced, "Intrusion resolved. Thank you for your cooperation. Please do not encourage spatial anomalies in the future." Elias slowly released Calith's wrist. "You just talked it out of existence." "It was not hostile," she said, "just uncertain." "That's how all my worst decisions start," Elias replied. Calith studied him for a moment. "You are not like your structural records suggest." "I hope that's a compliment." "It is observational." Rel arrived moments later, out of breath. "I missed something important, did I?" Elias pointed at the stabilized corridor. "We had a moment of interdimensional awkwardness, and then it went away because she asked it nicely." Rel stared. "I need to request transfer to something less metaphysically embarrassing, possibly warfare." Calith tilted her head again, this time slightly amused. "Your species reacts to uncertainty with humor. It is inefficient but resilient." "We call it survival," Elias said. She nodded slowly, then added, "In Virelian tradition, bonds are formed with those who stabilize unpredictable systems." Elias blinked. "Is that a poetic way of saying you're stuck with me?" "I am still translating your idioms," she said. "That one's accurate," Rel muttered. Calith's ears flickered again, almost like laughter expressed in a language the ship itself had not yet learned to decode. And somewhere deep in the meridian, the AI quietly updated its behavioral model to include a new variable labeled "Human plus Virelian interaction equals statistically improbable but increasingly concerning." The first warning came without sound. Not an alarm, not a siren, not even the polite tone the Meridian usually used when it was about to announce something catastrophic like minor hull breach or existential recalibration required. Instead, every screen on the ship simply paused for half a second, as if the universe itself had pressed a finger to its lips. Then Admiral Corrin's face appeared across every corridor display, every comm panel, every reflective surface that had the misfortune of functioning as a monitor. His expression suggested he had been arguing with reality and losing. "Captain Venn," Corrin said, voice clipped, "we have a situation." Elias, who was currently standing in engineering holding a diagnostic tool that had insisted on vibrating in Morse code for the last 10 minutes, sighed. "We always have a situation, it's kind of our brand." Calith stood beside him, watching the ship's systems flicker. Her ears were still, which Elias had learned meant she was paying very close attention. When they moved, things tended to happen. Sometimes politically significant things, sometimes physically impossible things. Corrin continued, "The Virelian Continuum Fleet has detected unauthorized treaty manipulation signatures. They believe the diplomatic bond is a covert infiltration." Elias blinked. That escalated from engagement confusion to interstellar espionage pretty fast. Calith tilted her head slightly. "That is incorrect interpretation." Corrin snapped, "We have incoming ships." The screens shifted. Space outside the meridian filled with Virelian vessels, vast, elegant constructs that looked less like machines and more like ideas given physical form. They did not move so much as decide where they were. Rel, who had arrived mid-crisis holding 2 ration bars and the expression of someone who had accepted disappointment as a permanent condition, muttered, "I miss paperwork conflicts." Elias stepped forward. "So let me get this straight. Your empire thinks you're compromised because you're, what, talking to me?" Calith replied calmly, "They interpret proximity as assimilation risk." "That's the most polite accusation of brainwashing I've ever heard," Elias said. The AI chimed in, "Clarification. Humans are also currently interpreting proximity as emotional compromise risk." "Not helping," Elias said. Calith looked at the fleet outside. "They will initiate containment protocol." Rel swallowed. "Containment meaning?" "Removal of variables," Calith said. Elias exhaled slowly. "Okay. That's a fancy way of saying we're about to get turned into a historical footnote." Calith turned to him. "Not necessarily." He gave her a look. That sounded like the kind of thing people say right before the next part involves screaming. Instead of answering, Kalith closed her eyes. The ship around them shifted subtly. Not physically, no alarms, no lights changing, but the sense of it changed, like the Meridian had suddenly become aware it was part of a much larger conversation. Elias felt it too. "What are you doing?" "Negotiating," she said. "With who?" Rel asked. Kalith opened her eyes. "Everything." That was when the station AI stopped speaking entirely, which for it was unprecedented. Outside, the Virelian fleet paused its approach, not frozen, hesitant, like something had interrupted their intent mid-thought. Corin's voice returned over comms, tighter now. "Captain Venn, what is happening on your ship?" Elias looked at Kalith. "I think she's doing diplomacy on a level that doesn't involve words anymore." "That is not a recognized procedure," Corin said. Kalith answered him directly without turning toward the comm. "It is now." Elias rubbed his face. "You can't just update diplomacy mid-crisis." "I can," she said. "It is inefficient otherwise." The silence that followed was almost respectful. Then one of the Virelian ships transmitted, not audio, not language. A structured emotional data burst, translated by the Meridian systems into something surprisingly simple. "Explain." Elias stared at it. "That's the entire message." Kalith nodded. "They are confused." "Yeah, I've noticed that's kind of the theme of the last 3 days," Elias said. He stepped forward. "Okay, fine, I'll do it." Rel grabbed his arm. "You are not authorized to negotiate interstellar crisis events." "I wasn't authorized to survive the last 7, Elias replied. "Yet here we are." He keyed the comm. "This is Captain Elias Venn," he said. "Humanity is not infiltrating anything. We are barely infiltrating our own supply chain." A pause. Then he added, "Also, if this is about Kalith, she is standing right here and she is definitely not being controlled. I tried once. It did not go well. She corrected my understanding of physics and my self-esteem." Kalith made a small sound that might have been amusement. The fleet transmitted again. "Bond is anomaly." Elias glanced at Kalith. "They really don't like the engagement thing." "It is not engagement in their terms," Kalith said. "It is alignment." "Which sounds even more intense," Elias muttered. Kalith stepped closer to him. "Alignment requires stability between unpredictable systems." Elias raised an eyebrow. "And we're stable." She considered him. "You are one of the most unstable organisms I have ever encountered." "Thanks." "And yet," she added, "you reduce entropy in your vicinity." "That sounds like a compliment wrapped in a physics insult." "It is both." The fleet waited. Corin interrupted again, quieter now. "Virelian command requests verification of intent." Kalith spoke, and this time her voice carried through every channel, every ship, every system listening. "I chose this alignment," she said. A pause stretched across space. Then she added, "It is more efficient than war." Elias leaned toward the comm. "She means she picked me. Sorry, everyone, I tried to warn you I was not diplomatic material." Rel muttered, "He really was." One by one, the Virelian ships began to recede. Not retreating in fear, recalculating. Their formation adjusted like a thought being revised. Corin's voice softened. "Acknowledged." And then something unexpected. "Captain Venn," Corin added, "try not to start any more interstellar incidents." Elias blinked. "No promises." The comm ended. Silence returned to the Meridian, but it was no longer tense. It felt resolved, like a knot that had finally decided to behave. Kalith exhaled slowly. Her ears relaxed, their faint glow dimming into a calm rhythm. "You changed their decision matrix," Elias said. "I adjusted their uncertainty threshold," she corrected. "That sounds like the same thing with more steps." "It is more respectful that way." Rel dropped onto a crate. "I would like to formally state I hate all forms of interstellar politics." The AI chimed in again, sounding oddly satisfied. "Crisis resolved." Updating emotional learning database. New category added, confusing but stable outcomes. Elias looked at Kalith. "So, what now?" She tilted her head, studying him the way she had on the first day, but differently now. Less like observation, more like recognition. Now, she said, we continue the alignment. That sounds like a long-term commitment, Elias said. It is, she replied, he sighed. Do I at least get less coffee like the last time? Caliph paused. I can negotiate with the beverage systems. That's all I ask, he said. Rel stood up, brushing off invisible dust. I am transferring to asteroid mining. No, you're not, Elias and Caliph said at the same time. Rel stopped. I hate that you synchronize now. Elias glanced at Caliph. Is that what this is, synchronizing? She considered it, among other things. Outside the ship, space remained quiet. No war, no collapse, no diplomatic catastrophe. Just a fleet recalibrating its understanding of what bond meant.